All right, good morning. This is Jay Hughes with Press On, and I have the privilege of introducing Theresa Springer, who's a friend and a client, and I am just super thankful to have her as my guest this morning. Theresa's been originating both residential and commercial loans, as she says, prior to credit scores existing. But Theresa really has had a long and successful career in lending, having been recognized most notably by the National Association of Home Builders as a top remodeling council associate, and then recently by the Clark County Association of Realtors as their 2016 Affiliate of the Year. Theresa is recognized as a major investor for the Washington Realtors PAC and also has been recognized as a Circle of Excellence member for Eagle Home Mortgage as one of their top producing loan officers and sales managers. Theresa lives in Clark County, which is in Southwest Washington in the Cascade Foothills. So beautiful. And she enjoys her time there with her husband of 30 years, her daughter with a superb son-in-law, and also two lovely grandchildren. So Theresa, I just want to say thank you so much for being with me this morning. I'm excited that you're here.
Well, hi, Jay. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, our market is actually very similar to yours. There's actually no inventory pretty much if you're under 350. And even our jumbo homes are going like crazy right now, and for mainly cash. And as we all know, it's the California market moving up here, which is great for the economy, but it does put a squeeze on the housing market, especially for the folks that can't qualify for maybe a $400,000 or $500,000 home. So things that I'm doing, I'm not doing anything different. I'm doing what I always do. I am working with my agents. The one thing I guess a little different is when I'm working with my clients, I'm actually qualifying them for as much as I possibly can within guidelines, and I'm explaining to them that the reason I'm doing that is because chances are they're going to get into a bidding war, and we need to know how far they can go. They also need to understand that bidding wars are rampant, and because they thought they might be buying a $200,000 home, their $200,000 home might become $225,000. And they should be prepared for the payment at a $225,000 level, even though they were thinking $200,000. And the same thing goes with anyone, buying $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. When I start getting above that market, the client really is like, hey, shoot, just get me what I can. We'll find something, we'll bring the cash in, and we'll make it work. So market is a little dependent upon the borrower, but pretty much across the board, I'm preparing my clients when I talk to them that we need to be ready to go in a bidding war immediately.
Yeah, good point. Well, a quick follow-up to that might be, what are you doing, like in the midst of a bidding war or on a property that you feel may be going that way? What are you and maybe the buyer's agent that you're working with the client doing to kind of make that offer as appealing as possible to that listing agent in helping and assisting, your buyer or your borrower who's buying this property to have the best possible chance of their offer being accepted?
Well, I'm actually very fortunate in the Clark County market where I live here in Southwest Washington. Everyone knows me.
Mm-hmm.
So when they see a pre-approval letter by me, they know it's rock solid. If I know we're going to get into a bidding war, I'll reach out to that listing agent and say, hey, it's me. This is what I've done to qualify the borrower. You know that I've done my due diligence. And in some cases, if I've had to send them through underwriting ahead of this, I'll let them know that, hey, we've already been underwritten, or we haven't. This is why I think we don't need to be underwritten because I have a very strong borrower. And that actually does help. I had a deal just not too long ago, a month ago, and we're going to be closing in another 30 days. It's a long close. But it was the third or fourth best offer, and we got it because I was the lender and because I reached out to the listing agent, had a conversation, explained how well qualified the borrower was, strength of credit, strength of cash, things like that, and that's why their offer got accepted.
So this actually plays right into the next question I wanted to ask you, because what you're talking about here is reputation, and you and I know you've worked very hard. You are super personable in building relationships with your agents. And in fact, when we opened the call, I said, what are you doing? What are you focusing your time and attention on right now? And you said, well, I'm kind of doing what I always do. I'm working with agents. And so let's talk about that for a moment. I mean, you're very successful in developing these relationships with agents. How would you describe how that process works for you? How do you introduce yourself to new agents? How do you identify those agents in the first place that you might want to work with? What does that process look like for you? And I know at this point in your career, you know the agents in your market. You've called them all, you've talked with them all, but think back, maybe a few years back in your career, what did that process look like for you?
Well, I am really big on producers, and I want to work with the best producers I can. So a few years ago, I ran into an individual who does market strategy for title companies, and it's a very limited market space. He only does it in a couple markets, Clark County being one, Portland another, and then in California. And I was able to subscribe to a service. In doing so, it allowed me to really focus on the producers, people that I knew were making money and doing deals as agents, rather than someone who I maybe thought was doing that.
Right.
If you don't have access to that as a loan officer, your title companies or escrow companies absolutely have this demographic information. They know what agents are producing. They know what their totals are because they're doing the same thing I am. They're going after the big producers and trying to woo them. So I've always used that, and I've used a cutoff in Clark County of 3 to 5 million for the agents that I want to work with. So meaning they have to produce a minimum of 3 to 5 million a year. In Portland, when I'm looking over there, I look at a minimum of 7 to 9 million before I want to talk to those agents.
Mm-hmm.
I also very rarely take on a brand new agent. I only do that if I've had another agent that I have an established relationship with come to me and say, hey, we have a new agent in our office who I really like, I'm mentoring, and I'd like you to start working with them as well. This actually happened recently up here in Clark County, where I have an agent that I've worked with for many years, very high producer. She's actually in the top 10 for her company for Washington State. And she asked me to do this, and I said sure, and I got another great relationship. But a lot of loan officers tend to pick the low-hanging fruit, which is the people that don't produce. The problem with that is you're going to spend all this time on people that soak up that time and energy and don't give you anything back. I'd rather take the time to go after someone, and it might take me a year or two, truthfully,
Mm-hmm.
to get that person, but I'm going to get them in the end, and I'm going to get a producer. So for me, it makes more sense to take a little bit of time to go after someone who does a lot of business rather than to spend my time spinning my wheels with someone who does a deal or two a year.
Yeah.
And I see that as a huge issue for loan officers. They don't recognize how to go after the big business.
Yeah. So you've hit two important pieces here for sure. You talked about the identification of the agents that you want to pursue. So you know the profile very clearly of what what an agent needs to look like, what their production level needs to look like before, so that's the identification process. Then you talked about, it's going to take you time. Might take you a year, might take you 2 years. And I love that you emphasize that because so many loan officers wrongly think, well, I reached out to that agent and I called him. I called him twice, and I sent him a handwritten note, and then nothing. I didn't ever get one deal, and it's like, gosh, it just it takes persistence. So those two we've covered. What I'd love to have you talk about for just a moment is what you do in that. Let's say it takes you a year to build a relationship with an agent. Walk us through, if a little bit of your systematic approach. What do the calls look like? How often are you calling? What other kinds of touches are you doing in order to work to forge that relationship with an agent that you've identified as a producer that you want to work with?
Well, it's actually really easy. I start out with phone calls, and I'm not giving phone calls to them to get business. I'm getting a phone call to them to get to meet them, number one. That's all I want to do is I just want to meet them because to me, the most important part of this is, am I going to like working with them?
Mm-hmm.
Because frankly, if I don't like their personality, I walk away because I won't work well with them. So that's the first piece of it. So I may call every 2 weeks for 6 months or 8 months and finally get a chance to go to coffee with them. then I'll sit down with them, have a little chit chat. We don't talk business. I will not talk business on the first meet, ever. I want to get to know them, to get to know if they're a good fit for me. A lot of loan officers make the mistake of thinking that the business has to flow one way. The reality is that this is my business. I need to make sure that they're a good fit for me, not the other way around. And that's a really common mistake I see. So there's that part of it. And then once I get to know them, if I think that they're going to be a good fit and I enjoy speaking with them and interacting with them, then I keep calling them. I'll send them a couple notes. I also find out where they're doing things. You know, are they having open houses, or are they doing events? I make sure I'm going to be there, things like that. And I just really try to meet with them and get their business at that point. That's where I'm really starting to get their business, is once they get to know me, they kind of, you know, do they really want to work with me too? If not, great, we both walk away, friends, you know, whatever. But then I know at least I have someone later on, if I have a transaction with them and they're on the other side of it, you know, as a listing agent, we've already got that rapport going whether or not we're working together. And that actually is super helpful, because then that actually gives me another step into them to try and get their business. This just happened with me, another agent recently. I've been after him truly since 2013. And I had a transaction with him, and I'm going after him now for his business really strong, because he saw how I worked. And he actually really enjoyed that. And he liked the transaction. Matter of fact, you couldn't believe I got the client approved where I did. And it all worked out really well. So I'm really pursuing him really, really hard. I'm calling him. I'm trying to get together with him. I actually have the client who we worked with calling him as well, saying, hey, you really need to work with Theresa. So it's like that. You just have to kind of get a rapport. And I think one of the biggest mistakes is people think that I've called them, I've sent them a note, maybe I brought them cookies, you know, their office, something I never do, and they won't give me business. Well, that's not how business is done. People want to do business with those they like and trust. And you have to establish that you work well together and that you can trust each other. Because at the bottom line, their paycheck is dependent on your production.
Amen, sister. So all of that, you and I know. I mean, we talk about this just when we're on your coaching calls. These are principles that are universal. What's interesting is that most loan officers, as you know, those of you that are listening to this, you've heard it before. You've heard these things before. The question is, how are you going to put that into practice? Because you're, you know, with Theresa. I mean, we know, Theresa, this is how you've built your business, and it does take time. It takes time to identify and build trust with an agent. It takes time to do that, but the payoff obviously is huge down the road. For just a moment, help us out, because I know there's going to be people listening right now that are thinking, well, okay, this sounds great, and I've heard this before. I'm supposed to, you know, pick up the phone. I've identified an agent that I want to talk to, but I'm not. Theresa saying, don't talk business. Okay, maybe for me that feels very uncomfortable, and so role play for me with just a moment, Theresa. Like if we were on the phone, you were calling me, and I'm an agent that you've identified. Like, how would those first few calls go? Like, what would be some of the, you know, maybe it's scripting. I know you're used to, you know, kind of what you say. So how would you talk to me? How would you address me? What would be the things that you and I would be talking about on an initial call or two like that?
Well, I will tell you truthfully, usually it takes about 8 or 10 calls of voicemails before I get a hold of them. And
Right.
then finally when I do, it's like, hey, Jay, how are you today? It's Theresa Springer, Eagle Home Mortgage. You know, it's really interesting. You and I are both really large producers in this area, and we've never had a transaction. And by the way, I always make sure we haven't. And I really would like to get to know you. I know you do great business. I know you have a lot of integrity, but I really would like to get to know you, the person, and I'd like to take you to coffee to do that. Would you mind meeting me on, you know, this date or this date? And I usually know kind of where they live and where they work out of, and then I'll suggest something local to them.
Because you've done your research, by the way. People
I
you need to
do.
remember that, right? Like, you've done your research.
I do. I am a heavy, heavy researcher. I will also find out in the office that they're in if there's someone I know, and then I can also add to the conversation, well, hey, I talked to Joe Schmo, and Joe Schmo and I have done some deals together. He also has a lot of respect for you. So I just thought it would be really great for us to get together and have some coffee and just chit-chat and get to know each other a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, it's so funny because where they're like, well, I have another lender. And I said, that's great. I can really respect that because there's a number of agents that I work with exclusively, and they say the same thing. I'm not looking to get your business right now. I'm looking to get to know you to see if it makes sense in the future if we have a deal, so that way we work well together. Maybe there's something else we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting because as soon as I say, I'm not here to get your business. I'm really here to get to know you, so in the future when we do have a transaction, we already have a rapport, and they actually really respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really their ego that's responding to it, and that's what I'm playing to, is their ego.
Well, it disarms that objection,
It does.
and it allows them to kind of back away and just go, okay, well, she's not asking me for business right now today, and so she really just wants to get to know me, and that feels good. That feels good. I am curious, like, what would you say? Because I'm certain most of the objections you get are just that, right? Because especially all producing agents, of course, they have an exclusive relationship or two with loan officers. Are you able to disarm that objection most of the time, and they'll go to coffee with you, or does that sometimes it takes some additional phone calls to reach that point?
It really depends on the agent. There's actually agents that will just say, no, I'm not interested in meeting, don't call me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And like, okay, I understand that, I respect that, and then I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's agents sometimes that, yes, it'll take a few more phone calls. It'll take me meeting them out in public at different events.
Mm-hmm.
I'm super active in the local realtor association. So it's really funny when people actually speak to me on the phone and I've never met them face to face. I always get, oh, I know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because they see my name everywhere in the realtor association. I've invested really heavily of my time and of financially too, because I do sponsorships. I also am part of their RPAC. I'm one of their I'm what they call a crystal level. I've gotten to that point with my contributions towards their RPAC, which is very important because realtors want to protect their industry, and I'm very active in that aspect of it. So they kind of know me whether they know me or not,
Yeah.
which is super helpful. And a lot of people forget networking. Networking actually really builds your reputation because they may not know you, they may not know or have had a transaction with you, but they may end up knowing your name, and as long as there's nothing crazy associated with it, you've got a warm lead into the realtor.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your reputation piece, one thing when I'm coaching loan officers all the time is we talk about how real estate agents want to work, what you mentioned, with those that they like and trust, but they want to work with successful loan officers, right? They want to work with people. And so when your name is out there, when you are producing at a high level, that's attractive. Realtors want to work with loan officers that are producing at a high level. They want to be associated with that. And so I think highlighting that through your reputation and accentuating that in sponsoring events and being active, all of that works together. So let's shift gears really quick. Although this may tie in a little bit too, but I wanted to ask you, what do you see as maybe one of the most common mistakes in loan officers that maybe you've worked with? These could be loan officers in your own office, maybe it's competition that you've worked with over the years, but I know you rub shoulders with a lot of people. What do you see as kind of the most common mistake loan officers make when they're trying to obtain business from a real estate agent, maybe that new relationship? What are they doing wrong?
They give up.
Yeah.
It's really simple. They give up, and they don't like rejection. No one likes rejection, but you have to be ready to take it and understand that they're not rejecting you, the person. They're rejecting the fact that they just don't want to deal with a new lender. And to me, that's a totally different issue. I'm not being rejected, not me, Theresa. it's the fact that I'm a loan officer and I'm bugging them, that's what they're rejecting. And people give up after that because they get really disheartened. For me, I'm pretty tenacious. I'm like, whoa, nope, we're moving forward on this little puppy. I'm going to get you whether you want it or not. And that's what I do. And so it makes a difference if you don't give up. And that's the other thing, too. If they know you're not giving up, you don't want to pester them, but if they know you're not giving up, they also come to think of that as that's how you probably work your deals. I'm known in the industry for being tenacious on a loan. If I believe in a loan, come hell or high water, that loan's going to get funded. And that is known about me in the industry. And so when people have me call them constantly, they know I don't give up. So they eventually talk to me.
Yep. Well, I think you're hitting a point that that I love, and I try to emphasize as often as possible. So we'll use this as a quick way to do that. Your tenaciousness when you are pursuing a real estate agent translates into exactly how you are when you work on a loan. And we've got to keep, those that are listening to today's call, got to keep that in mind. Like a real estate agent doesn't want to work with a loan officer that gives up quickly. Because if you're going to give up on the relationship and even just pursuing them, what are you going to be like when you're working on that tough deal, when the appraised value comes in low, right? Or, their cash to close all of a sudden is much higher than was anticipated. Like, are you going to give up as a loan officer? Are you going to stick your head in the sand and ignore the realtor? Like, all of that works together. And so I love that. And that is your reputation, both in the pursuit of an agent as well as how you're working on a loan.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so I love that, and I think those that are listening to today's call, if there's one takeaway, I would say that would be the one. As Theresa said, just don't give up. Don't give up. You've got to continue to pursue those relationships. Okay, so let's move. I know you have a really great social media system in place. We won't have a ton of time to touch on this, but I know people are interested in it. So would you take a minute and just describe for us, what are some of the social media sites that you use? How often do you post? I know you have a group in place that kind of helps manage some of this for you. And so maybe just take a minute and just give us a quick 30,000-foot overview of what your social media strategy has been.
So I actually contracted with a company to run my social media along with my marketing company that I employ for my website and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I did it is because, number one, people expect a certain level of professionalism out of me. And personal Facebook stuff and Twitter and all that is great, but I want to be known as an expert. That's very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've hired people to actually write for me articles at my blog, which get put out to my Twitter account, Facebook, so on. And it just makes it seamless for me because you can become just so involved heavily in social media where it's a monstrous waste of time. Now, I do personally post into Facebook and Twitter, and on occasion, and like on the weekends, I'll do stuff and comment and send stuff out about football because I'm a huge football fan.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, I really have someone else running it for me because, number one, I don't want to take the time. It's a massive vacuum. You walk into it and you don't get out. And then thirdly, it's really important to have it be professional. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people miss. Professionalism in social media is crucial. That is your foot forward out into the market. And if you're not handling it professionally, you do not look like a great loan officer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point earlier, you do such a great job of branding yourself and building your reputation. You do that in a lot of different ways, right? In how you pursue agents, being active in the Realtor Association, out in the market at events, attending open houses. Like, you're out there, your brand is out there, and then it sounds like you utilize social media as kind of an extension of that. It's a way of furthering your brand through social media.
That's actually really correct. And the two companies I have that run it, I have Left Brain, Right Brain Marketing. Mm-hmm. Drew runs all my website and all my face forward. there, and then I have another company, Ibis Marketing, that runs my blog and puts, actually they ghostwrite for me out into my Twitter and all that stuff, which truthfully I don't know all of where it's going because I don't have the time nor do I have the wanting to know. I just know they handle all my social media and push everything where it needs to go.
Yeah.
And it's great because it goes out in email, it goes out in a blog, it goes out in Facebook and Twitter and God knows what else. I have no idea. There's probably 4 or 5 other Facebook, feeds that it goes to that I just don't know about, that they've made me members.
Right. Yeah, I love it. Well, and those that are listening, we'll make sure and hyperlink both Drew's site, I think you said Left Brain, Right Brain, that site, some of your social media sites. We'll hyperlink that on our website here at pressingon.com so that if you're listening to this today, you can check some of that out. You can see what Theresa's doing and then think about how that might apply as you're building your social media presence.
You know,
Go ahead.
one thing,
Yeah.
Jay, when I first started out with IBIS, that's my social media side. They actually run my social media. I started out in doing their basic package, which was really awesome. And then I've graduated up to a much higher level, which is more targeted, where they're ghostwriting for me.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could hot link IBIS, because as a loan officer, if you can get your tweets daily or whatever, every few days out, that's a great way to do and not have to do it yourself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They're a do-it-for-you way to put those campaigns together, and so absolutely we will hyperlink them as well. So, couple more questions. I know we don't have a ton of time, but I wanted to. One of the things that I've always been really impressed with you about is that you're so consistent with your morning routine. And so I don't know, some people may go, well, wow, that's a big tangent. I mean, we've been talking about business, we're talking about building relationships, we're talking about social media strategies, and now all of a sudden we're on morning routine. But I really feel like for you, you have built this as a habit, and I don't want to steal your thunder here of what it's done for you, but I feel like it's a big kind of cornerstone in your life in having a consistent morning routine. And so just share a little bit what that is, and then why do you have it structured like that? Why is it important to you?
Oh, okay. I know this is really crazy. People think I'm insane. Number one, I don't get up early
Uh-huh.
because I don't start work before 10 o'clock. And a lot of loan officers think, oh my gosh, you're insane for doing that. But I get up around 7. I wake up normally. I don't use an alarm. And the first thing I do is, make my husband's coffee and all that neat stuff. And then I go work out. I work out for an hour. And it's my time. And then by the time I'm done working out and getting that all done, my husband's up and he's having his coffee. And then we have some time together in the morning where we chit-chat and figure out what's happening with each other's day, things that we need to do together or separately, or, things that we need to address. And then I go get ready and go to work. And it's so fabulous because it's a great way to start a morning where, for me anyway, it's calm. It's, I get my workout. I have to work out every morning because that gets me focused and it gets me feeling great. And then I go to work, and it's always good. And sometimes I walk throughout the day, because I actually work in a really great business complex where I can do that. But I really, really like physical activity, and I think it's important for the mind. I think it's important for the spirit, and I think it's important for the body, because if you're not feeling great, you're not functioning at your highest level. And I am strongly, strongly in favor of functioning at my highest level because that's how I produce. And if I can't do that, I can tell. If I have to miss a workout for some reason, like I have to be somewhere really early, which usually happens twice a year, and it's 2 events, and I make the exception for these 2 events, but that's it. I work out every morning, and I don't care if it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I don't take a day off from it. It's just a way for me to get up in the morning and go and focus. And the other thing I don't do, this cracks people up, I don't do email. I don't answer calls. I don't, text. I don't do any of that until 10 o'clock in the morning. As a matter of fact, I have my phone set up so it will not even ring until 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, you have your after hours set. So So I love that, and man, I just hope if you're listening, you're jotting down a few notes. Again, nothing that Teresa's sharing. This is not probably new information to you, but the question is like, how are you going to apply that? Like, what might that look like for you? And I know everybody's at different stages of life. Maybe you're a young mom right now with young kids, and so you're thinking, well, that doesn't work. Like I'm up at 5 a.m. And that's true because everybody is at different stages of life. But there are principles here being articulated that are super important. And so I love that. I jotted down, you have your routine in place to help you focus and produce at your highest level. And so for those listening right now, be thinking about that. What could I do? Maybe for me, maybe it's not an hour workout, but maybe I could get 15 minutes in. I could get 15 minutes in before my day starts. And but whatever it is for you, it's got to be consistent. And I love that about you, Theresa. I mean, I know you're hyper disciplined in that. It's become a habit. It doesn't even take effort for you to do that anymore. It's just what you do. Couple more quick questions. I've laughed with you before. We've talked about how you're a get it done type of person, and I know you manage your time really well. Maybe one, we could talk about this topic, I know, for an hour, but just give us a quick tip. Somebody might be listening today and just going, how does she manage her time so well? Like, what would be one thing that you could say to somebody that might help them in how they're either managing their time, blocking their time, in order to make that time that they're spending each day the most efficient?
I am going to say there's not one thing, it's to me it's two things. But the number one thing is time blocking. You have to time block. Like if you look at my schedule, every morning I have my coffee time, my workout time, and then there's a blank spot because then I'm getting ready and I'm 10 o'clock, I start work. So time blocking is actually the most important thing to me. The second is that I also have to be flexible. Now I am very inflexible about my morning routine. I'm totally inflexible about that. But for the day, because I work from like 10 to 6 or 10 to 7 daily, I have to be flexible throughout the day. I do have certain things I do at certain times, like I have my realtor calls, I always call at the same time, and I have that blocked. I have my pipeline meeting, that's blocked. I know when I want to do appointments with clients. I know when I want to do appointments with realtors. I also have to work between two offices. I work in Tigard in Portland, and then I also work in the Vancouver office. So between the two is 15 miles, but it takes an hour travel time. So I have to really carefully plan my day if I'm running between offices. That's the second thing to me, is really making sure my day is planned well, so I'm not trying to drive 100 miles an hour between Tigard and Vancouver to make from one appointment to the next.
Yeah.
So it's actually time allocation after blocking.
With your planning on that, do you is that something you're doing night before? Are you planning out your day? Do you plan out your week in advance? Do you plan it out in the morning? Is there a combination that work there?
I'd say it's kind of both. I always look at my schedule the night before and kind of know, okay, when I wake up, I know after I do my morning routine what I'm going to be doing. But then I'm also planning out a week or a month in advance as well, because I know I have certain events coming up that I need to be at, and I need to rearrange my schedule around those events.
Yeah, perfect. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you again so much. Before we go, any last thoughts, kind of closing thoughts, before we end our time together?
I have one, and this is one thing that I know a lot of loan officers have asked me about. And this is something I do. It's kind of funny, and people think it's old-fashioned, but I cold call agents. I have agents that, especially the ones I'm trying to work in Portland now, I have agents that have never met me, and I cold call people, and people think I'm insane, but I do it. And I will tell you, I picked up the phone recently, called an agent who was having a horrible time with her her lender, and I got her business. I picked up 2 of her refis personally, and then she's sending me business. So cold calling can be really scary. For me, it doesn't bother me because I know if they're not rejecting me personally, I understand that. But I think it's a great way to get business, and I will tell you, a lot of agents are so shocked about being cold called that they almost always meet with me because I have the temerity to actually reach out to them when they don't know me and say, hey, I'd like to get together with you for coffee just to get to know you a little bit and understand who you are. And it works. It really, really works. But it is scary.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you've overcome, call reluctance in that. And, we've talked about this before. This is something you've said you used to make 30 or more of these, cold calls a week. And somebody on the phone today or listening today might be thinking, well, gee, how would I ever do that? But maybe for you, it's starting with a couple cold calls a week and just helping you to get over that call reluctance piece. And I think what I would emphasize is what Theresa's able to do. She's able to make those cold calls because she's got a great reputation, and she's able to now leverage that reputation. She's active in the marketplace. We talked about how you're leveraging social media as well, and so oftentimes when you're calling somebody, they do know who you are, and now you're not trying to just get their business, like you said. You're just trying to get to know them. So I think that's great. I think it's an excellent tip and a great way to close it out. But Theresa, thanks so much for being on the call today.
Thank you, Jay, for having me. It was fun.
Very, very fun and very informative. And for those that are listening, thank you guys for participating. I hope that you will take some of these things that Theresa has shared, that you'll take a few minutes even right now and just kind of look at your notes and go, what is one or two things that I could apply in my business today? And I challenge you in that. Let's go ahead and block out the time and think about an agent or two perhaps that you could reach out to and begin that process of maybe it's going to take you 6 months or a year to build a relationship, but you'll be glad that you did. So with that, again, this is Jay Hughes with Press On, and thanks for being with us today.